Good afternoon. We'll call to order the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals regular meeting for August 23rd, 2017. The first item on our agenda is a consideration of the minutes from our regular meeting on June 28th, 2017. Those have been provided. Are there any changes necessary on those? If not, those will stand as approved, and we'll move on to our next item, which is nomination of chair and vice chair. First, we'll start, I guess, with a nomination and election of a chair.
I'll make a motion that we have Mr. Davis Young as our chair.
I'll second.
Guys, sure you want that?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, that's approved. Thank you. Next, the nomination of a vice chair.
I'll make a motion that we keep the same one we had.
Thank you.
Mr. Halliburton.
Thank you.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Anything additional?
She may have something to say.
I'm perfectly content with that decision.
All right.
All in favor say aye.
No discussion.
Aye.
Any opposed? Don't hear any.
Cricket.
Okay. Okay, with those out of the way, we'll now move to new business. The first application under variance and special use permits is application Z17044 by Danny Rhodes, representing Goodwill Industries of Middle Tennessee. They're making the following request for property located in a commercial highway district at 1114 Mercury Boulevard. This application has a couple of components. The first is a special use permit to relocate and operate a temporary mobile recycling center. The second is a variance of 8 feet from the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which states that no receptacle shall exceed 40 feet in length to allow a trailer 48 feet. And the third is a 100-foot variance from the ordinance, which states that no receptacle shall be located closer than 300 feet from residentially zoned property to allow the trailer no closer than 200 feet. Ms. Rush, if you'd review that for us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair. I first wanted to note that in June of 2016, the city ordinance was amended, and it did make a change to the maximum length of the trailer to 48 feet total. And the Goodwill Industries trailer is 48 feet. The prior ordinance had it limited to 40 feet, which necessitated that request of a variance. But no longer is that necessary because it does comply with the ordinance and the standards. So the applicant is requesting to withdraw that second variance requested. The applicant, Goodwill Industries, has been operating in this parking lot of the Mercury Center Plaza for at least 5 years, and they have moved the trailer approximately 75 feet over underneath the trees, but it's also on a separate parcel. The property had been sold to a different owner, to Kroger, and the Goodwill trailer moved to the property that was owned by who they had currently had the lease with. So because it is on a new parcel, it does require a new special use permit for this location. The trailer's actually a little bit further away than the residential neighborhood than it was before. It was about 175 feet closer, and then in this case they're 200 feet away from the residential neighborhood. So it's a little bit better location. It's also under some shaded trees. They take in collections from the community of recycled items, clothing, household appliances, small goods, and things like that. Goodwill Industries does come and collect discarded furniture and trash that shows up there as well on a very regular basis. Whenever I see it, I get in touch with the owner, and they've either had already picked it up or they're on their way right away with a truck to go and collect that trash. So they have been maintaining the site in a very clean and orderly manner. They do operate 7 days a week between the hours of 8 and 6 in the summer, and then in the winter hours they're between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Staff has no additional comments. I do see that the applicant's here and can respond to any questions from the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for staff at this point?
Didn't we, on Planning Commission, see a site plan for this development that Kroger's doing? So will that new site plan impact the placement of this in any way?
No, because this will be on a different parcel. So the trailer's on a different parcel than the Kroger parcel.
So they're not redeveloping the entire, I guess not. They're not redeveloping the entire parking lot and the buildings that face Mercury, not Mercury, but Middle Tennessee Boulevard?
I do apologize. I don't know that that's the case. I do know that there's separate ownerships, but if...
I think that the plans did call for the entire parking lot to be rebuilt.
Correct.
Constructed. And I would expect that if that happens and when that happens, there would be a temporary dislocation of this facility while they're doing striping or blacktopping or whatever they do.
Okay.
But it would appear that the Kroger, this trailer is now on the site where the Kroger had acquired, and I'm expecting that Kroger had asked them to relocate it to, or maybe it's just of their own, but anyway, it would get off of the Kroger site itself, but still be in the same general vicinity.
I mean, do you know the progress of that at all from your standpoint?
I've not heard anything
Okay.
about that parking lot being redone, no.
Okay.
We're in frequent communication with the property manager.
Right.
And in fact sought reapproval from him for this application, and he hasn't mentioned anything to me.
Okay.
We'd be certainly happy to comply with whatever the property ownership and property management needs us to do.
Right. Okay. The only point to that is I'd hate for you to make this application, and if it was imminent that they were going to have to redo the parking lot in your placement, that you would have to come back before this board, but it doesn't sound like it's imminent if you don't know anything about it.
We'd probably be the last one to know. But
Okay. Okay.
Did that come before us and there was some landscaping additions?
It could have been.
That would be in the parking lot as well?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that would impact your placement is hard to know without those. I seem to remember there being, that there was some additional landscaping coming into that parking lot as well.
Okay.
But
If that does happen, I'd be happy to come back
Right.
and report
Okay.
to this body.
You're Mr. Rhodes? Is that
sorry?
correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Danny Rhodes, Director of Donations.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add to the application?
I don't think so. I've appreciated your support in the past.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Rhodes? Thank you. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. If there's anyone that wishes to speak on this application or any other, if you would, come to the podium and state your name and address and give us any comments you might have. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for any further discussion or motions on two of these components, one the special use permit and then the 100-foot variance.
That's correct. They should be separate motions.
Right.
I make a motion to approve the special use permit and adopting the recommended findings by staff as well as the recommended conditions by staff.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for the special use permit. Are there any further discussion? If not,
Question. Are these special use permits typically only 1 year in length?
Yes, I did speak with the director and assistant director, and they've been always a 1-year permit with renewal. We can, if the site is maintained in a good order and the conditions are complied with, we can do this administratively next year. So very similar to the fireworks temporary vendors. They would need to still come in for their permit, but it can be done at a staff level.
Okay.
And this one comes back only because they're moving to a different lot of record.
Right.
They're only moving a few feet in the same general area, but they are moving to a different lot of record, so
Okay,
it needs to
thank
come
you.
back.
all right, I have a motion and a second for the special use permit. Any further questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. And next we'll move to the 100-foot variance.
If no questions, I'll make a motion to approve the 100-foot variance.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that component? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. So that application has been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z17045 by Joey Hargis of Baker Donaldson, representing T-Mobile. They're making a request for property located in a commercial highway zone, 1643 Middle Tennessee Boulevard. This application also has three components. The first being a special use permit to construct a wireless telecommunication tower. The second, a 90-foot height variance from the, which states a maximum height of 75 feet to allow a mounted antenna height at 165 feet. And the third is a landscape variance from the ordinance, which requires a landscape buffer to reduce visibility from surrounding properties to allow no landscaping. Ms. Rush, if you'd review that for us.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Hargis of Baker Donaldson, he's representing T-Mobile South, that's requesting a special use permit to construct and install a new wireless telecommunications tower facility at 1643 Middle Tennessee Boulevard. The proposal is for a new monopole and antenna system that would be a total height of 165 feet. It includes the 155-foot pole plus 4 feet of a lightning rod at the top, as well as the antenna would be located at the top. This also includes ground-mounted equipment that would be placed within an 8-foot tall solid wood enclosure. And the request also includes the two variances as mentioned. One was for the height exceedance for the zoning district, which is highway commercial, limits things to 75 feet, and to allow that additional 95 feet in height. And then the second variance requested is to allow no new landscaping to screen the enclosure, which is required by Chapter 31 of the zoning ordinance. In this case, the property is a triangular-shaped parcel, and the location is in the most narrow portion in the back of the property, fairly far away from Middle Tennessee Boulevard. The adjacent property is developed with a commercial center, which was the one we were just talking about in the prior application, where there would be a new Kroger. So it's the Mercury Center Plaza. And the other properties are also developed with commercial uses, and a multifamily apartment complex is located northwest of the property. The applicant had submitted several documents of information in accordance with the city's new cellular telecommunication ordinance. They had to provide justification of why they needed a new tower, so they submitted a propagation study, which is the study that's in the pink document. It shows in that pink document where there's a gap in the coverage for T-Mobile in the light area. And then once the monopole is placed, a large segment of that area is now fulfilled, and they would be able to provide better service, especially with in-building, fewer dropped calls, and better service overall in this general area. The applicant also presented to us a structural design fall zone report, which was to show and to provide an engineering study analyzing if the monopole was to fall and collapse, where it would be collapsing into itself. So the engineers studied this, and it's presented the data that it shows it's a 30-foot collapse zone or drop zone, and the pole would be located at least 36 feet from the property line. So if there was a structural failure, it would not go off-site. It would not go onto the neighbor's property. It would be within this property. Another document they provided was a shared use plan, as we require now that if you are coming in with a new facility, you have to make provisions for future co-location of other providers, at least a minimum of 3 total providers per location. And they have done that. They provided documentation showing that 2 additional providers could locate on this monopole in the future. Due to the height, it also, we require an FAA determination that there's no hazard, no interference with any air traffic, and they've provided that documentation from the FAA, concluding that there would not be any hazards with this proposed pole. They also provided the planned construction set, which does show detailed and elevation drawings of what the pole would look like. T-Mobile has indicated that, as I said, that they do have a gap in coverage, and this would fulfill the gap. Staff was concerned because there are another facility very close by, and sought additional information as to why they could not co-locate on that, and that was a TVA tower that was nearby, and that one currently has 2 providers on it and is full, so there's no room for others. Staff does want to ask the applicant, when they have an opportunity to come to the podium, that there are additional TVA towers within that 1-mile radius that was provided in the pink report, and maybe they can explain why they could not locate on another TVA. So the one that's closest to them is full, but there are several tall TVA towers within that 1-mile radius. And then in regards to the landscaping variance requested, the applicants indicated that just due to the small size of where they're proposing, there would not be room for landscaping. There is is shown in a picture in the staff report, that there is a drainage channel ditch that runs alongside of this property line that takes an extreme amount of surface runoff from stormwater and discharges to a discharge holding pond up to the northwest. And so you would not be able to plant in that area. And the fence pretty much is within 5 feet of the property line, so there doesn't have a lot of room for landscaping. But I'll leave that also up to the applicant to explain a little further detail. And I believe they wanted to do a presentation to show the fencing and why they would not be able to do landscaping as they're requesting that variance. That concludes my presentation, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer from the board.
Any questions for staff?
I have a question. Have we ever approved a tower with no landscaping before?
I don't know. The ordinance is brand new, and I don't think we had that in our ordinance in the past.
We generally have required it. I don't know that we haven't, but I can't say for sure, but I also don't know that we put had a tower placed in a location quite like this, where it's surrounded by the back of commercial
Loading docks.
Right.
And would be, I think, I don't know that the lack of landscaping would be I mean, it's for you to consider, but this might be a good candidate if there ever was one to waive the landscape, given its location.
Curious as to the precedent, if there was any precedent of similarity.
Right.
Thank you.
I don't know enough to say that we never have, but I know that in the normal, and certainly if it's a place where it's going to be visual, open to the public, basically to visualize it and to see it, we would require that some form of landscaping to just make it fit in a little better.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for staff? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Joey Hargis with law firm Baker Donaldson. With me today, to my left, are Mr. Glenn Pennington from EcoSite. EcoSite is the tower builder, and my client in this. And to his immediate left is Mr. Bill Perez, the T-Mobile RF engineer, who can address sort of locationally why this site was chosen. And then I'll follow up a little bit to talk about the landscaping variance. I've got a little PowerPoint I'd like to show you guys. For that, and first, let me thank you all for hearing this today, and I'd like to thank Ms. Rush for assisting us. We are the first application under this new section of your ordinance. Ms. King, to answer your question, the prior ordinance did not require landscaping along tower sites, and I think the description, like if there ever were a good candidate, we believe this is one to do so. One thing I want to point out too about this site is much smaller. Compound footprint-wise than general deployments when you see cell tower sites. Typically, those lease areas are 100 square or 75 by 75. This area, I think, is roughly 40 by 40, so a very small footprint. It was intentionally done so to sort of minimize the impact on these neighboring properties. that were involved there. I would like to, if I could, turn over to Mr. Pennington just briefly, if you'd like to describe to the board toward why EcoSite chose this and co-location opportunities that will be here too.
My name is Glenn Pennington. I'm the Senior Program Manager for EcoSite. Just briefly, what T-Mobile, our customer, has given us what is called a search ring in this area, and what we do is our due diligence to see if there is any existing structures that would actually meet their needs without building another structure. And we actually investigated that, and like I said, Ms. Rush actually explained about the TVA tower, that it was already at capacity. Also, we work with RF Engineering to collaborate, trying to actually what is the most optimal area for them, but also too is realizing that we're in the business of actually making sure that there is more than one carrier on a tower when we build it. And as the indication shows that 3 carriers, we're building this for 3 carriers. T-Mobile will be our anchor tenant. And as Mr. Harris mentioned, not to reiterate, but our compounds, we like to actually try to actually have 100 by 100 or 70 by 70 for 3 carriers minimum on the ground as well as vertically. This one is much smaller, so we did it for a couple of reasons. One is we try to locate it in the back of the property to make very minimal impact visually, and as well as we actually are putting an 8-foot wood fence, which many cases have done many towers like this without landscaping, and as Joey, when he gets back up here, he could show some visual indications of taking pictures from different directions, showing with the wood fence. You're not going to see the equipment on the ground anyway. At this time, unless you have any questions for myself, I may turn back over to Mr. Harris or maybe Bill, our T-Mobile RF engineer, to talk about why he needs this particular structure in this location.
It's more of an education question for me.
Yes, sir.
We had an application, I do not recall who the service carrier was, but I thought it was a neat idea, whereas they were locating I won't call it a tower, but where they could provide better service, and they were putting it on an existing structure in a particular area, kind of like a satellite dish, but it wasn't like that at all. Or it was on a light pole that was in the parking lot of this particular, similar to the previous application that we had. It was in a parking lot of a Kroger. So I was kind of under the impression that was the coming thing versus having these monolithic towers. So I take it that's not the case?
I'll do some education since you asked that question.
Yeah.
Very good question, and it's been asked me many times. Right now, there are still capacity and coverage issues across this country.
Right.
That structures are still a necessity.
Okay.
Again, in reference to other existing structures like billboards or light poles, traffic lights, they're at very low heights. And that is going to be the next phase, which is called 5G, which is not here yet. We're still in 4G technology.
Right.
And again, the difference between 4 and 5, just in layman's terms, is faster speeds, data speeds. And right now, the estimation is across the nation, and what that term is called is small cell technology.
Okay.
Where we use existing telephone poles that are small, as well as light poles, traffic lights. The estimate is initial, they're talking about needing 500,000 of those small cells across the country, and that's for capacity.
Okay.
So again, we're not there yet. There's still actually a need for towers that are larger than just light poles. So, and we try to, again, want to be in the business of being good doers, dealerships, lessen the impact visually, but that's, hopefully I answered that question.
Thank you.
I guess there were two others. I guess that will address the TV tower, the TVA line, where the other two companies are already leasing. Did you address or look at using one of the other towers? Is that one of the questions that staff had?
Yeah.
Oh, we have, but I'd like maybe Bill to talk about locations of that at this time.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Just to go back to what he was talking about, the 5G, and the problem with the small DAS is that for the future is that it requires fiber. So there's not enough dark fiber, it's going to take years to drop all that fiber, it takes time. It's not there yet, so that's why maybe in downtown Nashville, there's dark fiber that's been being used, but that's going to take some time for the small cells, but it is the future. But the standard's not even out for 5G, so it's not due out till maybe the end of next year. So even the standard's not out, so it's going to take some time. That's what we still have to, due to congestion. And right now the usage, as you know, Murfreesboro is growing, right? It's probably I live in Murfreesboro. It's one of the fastest growing cities. And that people are using more cell phone. Everybody wants more bandwidth. We need more service, right? Indoors, outdoors. So we have to try to provide this, and that is our goal, to keep the same quality of service along this particular area. Besides coverage, there's congestion. That to the left side off of 24 coming this way, there's a lot of usage there. So this side was going to offload a lot of that traffic, and it will help the other carriers too, no doubt. If they get on it, the whole area will get much better. So, lost my train of thought. What was the question that?
The TVA towers that are along this property.
TVA towers, in the old days, those TVA towers that are out there have been there probably for 10 years, 15 years. Back then when there was no other choice, they were the only ones. But those sites don't perform well because of the power lines. There's always broadband noise. You can't work on them. The power company has to get a bunch of orders to turn it off. So then it takes 6 months to change an antenna. So we've gotten off all of them because it's not good for the customers. You imagine having an outage for 6 months, and you can't fix it because the power company has to bring their own crew, and they have, it's very dangerous. They have to make the safety, a lot of signatures, and it takes time for all of that. So this antenna is really strategically, this monopole will be strategically placed. I'm glad we found that area because usually it's tougher in these kind of areas to find. I think it's in a good spot. But the TVAs, they're low. First of all, they're low. Most of these that you think they're pretty low for coverage. They just like to cover a neighborhood, not a pretty good area. There's two towers to the left that we're on one. I don't know if I have a map. And then the other one that's close to it is only like half a mile to it. One is 200 feet, the other one's 280. That's 3 miles from where we're at here. But still, the way the terrain is, this is the high part, this is the low part. So, the terrain goes down a little bit, so the coverage doesn't really make it across. So strategically, we're in a higher ground area here that's going to cover the whole area better.
Which is why you're not asking for that same number of feet, because didn't you just say?
Correct. We don't need 200 feet.
Right.
165 higher ground elevation.
Right.
We do. It'll do better. It'll do just as good. And there's no doubt this is in a strategic spot. We're pretty lucky that they found that spot so far.
With the other carriers already having a location close by, do you foresee using these future areas, or just kind of hope they do at some point, or?
Well, the other carriers are scattered. Like one is here, one is on the other one, but they're not on both. Right? Because if they went on the 281, they wouldn't go on the 200 one that's real close. We're on the 200, but we can't go on the 280. So this one will be strategic for all of them. No doubt.
I think they might be coming to you. Or you hope they would?
Well, to EcoSite. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're the anchor tenant, but the EcoSite will control that tower.
I would like to speak a little bit to the TVA towers because I may be the one that at least partly responsible for raising that question. I went back out again today and looked at it again, and at least some of the antennas that are on that tower that's right just a few feet really from this site are up above the power lines. So, and from my work with MED on somewhat similar things, MED's power is a whole lot less than that in TVA lines. These are, major transmission lines as opposed to the local distribution lines that MED has. But whenever you get some equipment that's either in the power space in the area where the power lines are running or above those power lines, neither these folks nor anyone else other than TVA can get up there to work on it. I mean, there's obviously a serious safety risk factor to be working in the power space or above the power space. So while initially it seemed like that those two towers that are maybe 100 yards, 150, 200 yards away from the tower that's at capacity might be good ideas, the practical matter of trying to work and trying to place something either within the electric power space or above it does present some serious drawbacks. Not to say it couldn't possibly at some point be used, but the applicants are correct that it would place limitations on them. If you need to, I do know that if you need to get TVA to come and do something, that's probably going to, unless the line's been knocked down and you got an emergency situation, they won't be here tomorrow morning. So there's reasonable. Yeah, again, not to say it's impossible to put it there, but there's some reasonable difficulties with it from the applicant's standpoint.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, we, as of now, we have a project going. We're getting off all the TVA towers right now. So we've gotten off a bunch of these because of this problem. The customers, it's too much. The 4 months. Imagine you had no coverage in your house for 4 months because we can't get up there. It's really tough. But years ago, I guess that was the only way to quickly get anything up. Now, I think a lot of the ordinances have changed and things like that. And
Okay.
they're realizing that, the problem. But
Okay. Any further questions? Or?
yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. And just to briefly, and I appreciate those gentlemen address, and just briefly touch on, actually learned something today that the parcel to the north is going to be redeveloped. So at the time I filed this application, I was aware of that, but glad to do it. Just a little bit about the landscape buffer. The whole intent, if you think about why this was drafted, is to screen this site visually from surrounding property. Okay? And it's what I submit to you, both not only as I've highlighted in the area, this is from your ordinance, to reduce visibility from the public right-of-way. This site, obviously, you've seen in the aerial. You won't be able to see it from the right-of-way, but also surrounding properties. And what we're proposing is an 8-foot-high, solid privacy wooden fence where we will completely screen this area. And to give you some idea, I've pinpointed the location of our proposed tower in the existing foliage. Some of this obviously immediate to the tower will be taken down, but the vast majority of this will remain untouched, which will help act as a visual screen between us and the residential properties to the northwest. To give you a couple ground shots, this is the adjoining property. Of course, this is being redeveloped, but to give you an idea of sort of what we were screening against, I know all that's going to be knocked down and renovated out, and that's a good thing. Obviously, they'll do some landscaping along their side. This is the adjoining property to the west or southwest, and the loading dock areas for them. But that's that large vegetative existing foliage that's there. And as you can tell, the topographic conditions of that property versus our property, it's much lower, as Mr. Perez talked about. And give you some idea of ground shots, I'm standing down at their property boundary, shooting back up. You notice the grade change in the upper left photograph. So that elevation, along with an 8-foot fence, obviously will not be able to be seen from adjoining properties. And we think that's, in this particular location, a better alternative, given the constraints of the site, the shape, the narrowness of the lot. So I submit that to you, and here if you have any questions regarding the tower site. Thank you for your consideration. We appreciate you guys taking the time to meet with us, and sort of excited to be your first special use tower case under the never like to be the guinea pig. Give you some idea about time frame. These guys have been working on this site a little over about a year or so. So in the process, they've kind of evolved from, oh, here's the ordinance, and we know we may have a setback variance too. It's amended into this process. So if you notice some of my documentation might reference the older code, that would be why in that. So thank you all for your time.
Anything else for the applicants?
You mentioned that some of that landscaping would be, do you know how much of the existing landscaping would go, or?
The compound itself, Ms. Russ, I don't know if you have the site plan
I do.
scan.
Could we have that?
The overall area that's there, if I can, my mouse will control, but the overall area, which you see the triangular piece, on that site plan, we've denoted a little area in red in which that landscaping would be removed.
Just within the fence enclosure?
Yes, just inside our leased area.
The landscaping to the tip will remain then the natural?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. That area. So just the immediate landscaping right. Oops, I lost my PowerPoint. But as you saw the location on the Google Earth, that immediate right there in the compound that'll be where T-Mobile's location will be.
So the location is going to be not where there's currently parking, but where there's currently some landscaping.
There is a little bit of landscaping. Yeah, the tower itself will sit on where the current asphalt is. There is a portion of that compound area where T-Mobile's equipment will sit.
So it'll be kind of on that edge.
Yes, and then
the parking and the landscape.
That's right, and that landscape portion right from the point back, probably 15 or 20 feet will be retained.
Will still be there. I was just.
Yeah, we're not going to come through and just
to
chop
get
it
an
all
idea.
No.
You may want to put some landscaping at the rear of that one building. No, I'm just kidding.
Anything else for the applicants?
Yeah, excuse me.
See that building's going away. I didn't know that before today.
Yeah. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion. Again, we've got 3 components to this application.
I would just note that on that the back of house that we shot the picture of that had some sort of patchwork on it, that a part of that is scheduled for redevelopment, but I don't know the status of that. We were talking about that earlier. I haven't heard anything for quite some time about the status of that project, but assuming it does go forward and is completed, that will still be the back of house. That will still be the service delivery and loading dock area for everything. So it's not going to be a front door to a store back there. It'll still be the back service area.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion that we approve the special use permit to construct the tower.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second for the special use permit. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the special use permit's been approved. Next is the 90-foot height variance.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance, including the recommended findings by staff and the recommended conditions set by staff.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for the 90-foot height variance. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that part is passed. And next is the landscape variance.
I'll make a motion to approve the landscape variance.
Second.
Motion and a second for the landscape variance. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. That application has been approved. Appreciate you guys coming in.
Joey?
The last application day is a special use permit. It's application Z17042 by Jeff Hooper of Barge, Cawthorn and Associates on behalf of the Rutherford County School Board for Siegel High School, requesting a special use permit to allow expansion of an institutional group assembly use public school. They're constructing 2 building additions at Siegel High School. Addition A is a 2-story classroom, 21,644 square feet. And then addition B is a one-story addition of 5,690 square feet. This is for property in an RS-15 zoning district located at 3300 Siegel Road. You review that for us, Ms. Rush.
Thank you. Mr. Hooper is representing the Rutherford County School District. The school district is wishing to construct 2 building additions at the Siegel High School located over on North Thompson Lane. As noted, there would be a total of approximately 27,334 square feet. The addition in the rear is a 2-story addition that would accommodate classroom space for the students that are there. If you've been out to the site, you probably have noticed that there are several modulars in the back of the building that are being utilized by the school for educational space. And this addition would then accommodate those students. So the intent is for those modulars to go away and that the students would occupy then this building. Addition B is going to be located at the front entrance of the building, and it's basically going to be some additional area where they're going to have some formal art space where they'll hang artwork, and it'll provide a new entry into the building. For both additions, they're not going to make any changes. They do not affect the rest of the building. They don't affect parking or circulation, so nothing's going to be removed. So all that will remain in place. These are going to be going into areas outside of that circulation area. However, during the construction phase, they will have equipment out there and materials, and so they will have to make some temporary, during the construction phase, recirculation plans, which will be provided to the school families so that they will be very well aware of what the circulation will be during the construction. The applicant's here today to answer any questions, and I'm happy to also answer any questions from the board. Thank you.
Any questions for staff?
So are they finally going to remove all of the little additional buildings outside, or will there still be some left?
I was told they would all be gone.
Oh, okay.
Currently, they have 7 to 8 portables on the south end of the school, and this addition is to replace those portables.
Great.
Good afternoon. You're Mr. Hooper?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add, or?
At this point, do you have any questions of us? I will say, I guess for y'all's benefit, we're a little bit backwards on the approval process. We did gain Planning Commission approval last week because we had some issues of getting our public notices out. So we're a little bit backwards in this process, but that's to keep us on schedule as far as the construction is concerned. We're bidding this project September 7th, and we would anticipate being into construction within 2 to 6 weeks after that.
No pressure then. Thank you. Any other questions?
I assume that not only will this remove the portables, that there'll be plenty of room to grow, so we won't have portables again in a couple.
Well,
I know that we have so much growth in Rutherford County, it's hard to predict.
It's hard to predict that growth in specific districts, but so I can never say there won't be more portables, but this does eliminate the need for portables today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This time we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion.
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve the special use permit. Glad to see it happening.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That application's been approved. Next item on our agenda, staff reports and other business.
We have no new reports for today.
No new reports.
I have nothing.
Have nothing. All right, then we'll stand adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.